unwritten constitution, and things have changed over time. But we now have a Supreme Court that's only a couple of decades old. Our Supreme Court used to be inside the legislature in the House of Lords. So we have evolved and modernized in recent years. But I suppose the important thing about British democracy is common law. So much of our law comes about because of rulings that take place within the court system. So you have a sovereign parliament, and you have common law.
Let me, in fact, take that to you as well, Adela, on the situation in your country. Of course, what is the relationship there in the Czech Republic of executive, of judiciary, the relationship that is shared by them, and the balance that the two offer each other?
Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very glad for that. Thank you for the question. Yes, Czech Republic is maybe some of them you don't know where it is. It's in the middle Europe, and it's a small country which is a part of European Union, very proud part of European Union, and that's very crucial for us. And for your question, I would like to ask that the constitutional system in Czech Republic is quite stable. We have the judicial system is stable. It's very, very independent, and in charters we are very high of that. I am, as a professional, I am an attorney at law, so I really am proud for our judicial system. Maybe I would like to talk about the topic is about future, and I think I'm very glad that there are so many young people here, because if we talk about future, then we talk about about decisions that will influence their lives. So thank you for that. I have seen so many young people here. Thank you.
Yes. Rachel Brooking, coming to you next. If we talk about New Zealand, tell us a bit about the relationship there and the system, of course, which allows the executive and judiciary to balance out each other. What is the relationship between the two entities? As they say, these are the pillars of any democracy, and New Zealand is one too.
New Zealand is indeed a democracy, and we have followed much of what Britain gave us in terms of that separation of powers is very important, but also, like Britain, New Zealand has no written constitution. Unlike Britain, it does have a Treaty of Waitangi, which was an agreement made in 1840 by the Māori chiefs in New Zealand and the British Crown in Queen Victoria's name. So that is an important difference, an important part of our constitutional arrangements. And we're also very clear on that separation of powers between all three, being the courts, the legislature, and the executive. So we talk a lot about that separation between the executive and the legislature, as well as the difference with the courts. So we are careful as politicians not to impugn any decisions made by courts and to respect those. But an unusual feature in New Zealand is that we only have one House of Representatives. So we have no upper house, and we have no written constitution, so we have no constitutional court. And we can change laws in New Zealand very quickly. So how that is relevant is that the court might make a decision that the government, the executive, does not like. So the government will get the parliament to make a law that effectively overturns that court decision. And that can happen quite a lot in New Zealand, and it can happen in a day, which is quite unusual.
Absolutely. Mikhail, coming to you, given the fact that you come from the Maldives, I'm sure you must be having some of the most prettiest court locations, of course, in the world. But, tell us about the system, of course, there and the relationship that executive and judiciary share in your country.
Thank you for having me on the panel. Given that Maldives is a very young democracy, we only had true separation of powers in 2008 with our new constitution. And we have so far had a very difficult relationship, I would say, between the executive and the judiciary, with judges being impeached depending on who's in government. We saw that in the recent months too. However, I think that as time goes by and as our democracy matures, that the strength of our institutions will come into being.
How do we also ensure this, the Member of Parliament from the Czech Republic said, of course, that the youth is here in big numbers, and how do we ensure for the future, Dan Carden, if I come to you, that this respect for the judiciary continues amongst the young as well? How is it happening in the UK?
It's a good question. I think there's many challenges that we face in our politics in terms of how we rebuild a new social contract between politics, which includes all the institutions of government and judiciary, and the next generation. And I used my opportunity to speak to talk about the importance of politics in the transformation that we're now living through. And you often hear at events like this that borders no longer matter, sovereignty no longer matters, technology is global, and therefore states and nations are less important. And I fundamentally couldn't disagree more with that. I think as this transformation takes place, and actually the politics of the last decade and longer has shown us that many multilateral institutions have been losing the confidence of the public. Publics are turning to their states and their governments more to demand more action and more sovereignty over their borders. And therefore, we mustn't think that because so much happens globally and internationally, that states no longer matter. And I think the next generation will be demanding even more of their politicians, not to be caught up in multilateral institutions and demands of quangos, and we call them quangos, sort of semi-governmental autonomy. They want democracy. They want to be able to demand things of their politicians, and they want their politicians to be able to deliver, and that's sovereignty.
We of course heard from the Honourable Law Minister of India just earlier this afternoon, and here also in a segment as part of NXT Law, spoke about how India has modernized our laws very recently, and we've enacted a new code as part of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sahita, as it's been called in India, the BNS. Earlier it was the Indian Penal Code, the IPC. Now it's become the BNS, and this was sort of shedding the colonial, era laws of the past and upgrading them to make them more relevant to the India of today. At the Senate in the Czech Republic, how recently have you upgraded your laws? Is there a need for overhaul of laws, do you believe, over time?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, but as I said, Czech Republic is a part of European Union, and European Union is based on values on the same values for all the countries, and these values are human rights, supporting democracies, the rule of law, equality, and also supporting the civil society. So these are the topics which we in our parliament are focused on. So as our colleagues from European Union. And I must say that I think that we as politicians in Czech Republic, as I see it, we sometimes have a problem that we are somewhere on the top and we don't know what people are solving in their homes. We don't know which problems they have. So there is a lack of trust in us politicians. So I think that in our policies we have to cooperate with people. And as maybe I can remind you, Václav Havel, who received, that was our former president, he was persecuted by communists during the communist time. He was a leader of our Velvet Revolution. And this president, our beloved president, who's unfortunately not with us, he trusted in people, and he said that democracies are as strong as we communicate with people and with the civil society. So this is, for me, his model is for me, he made me some guidelines how should our parliament work on legislation in the future, how we should help supporting and developing human rights for people and help them live how they want to be much more happy.
Also, after joining the EU, how much has that influenced lawmaking in Czech Republic?
Yes, it influenced very much, and we are not against each other. We cooperate with European Union very often and every day. I am a member of the Committee for European Affairs. So, me as a senator, I am in a very intensive contact with the European Commission, and I must say that for us, for Czech Republic, the membership in European Union is very good, because we can find how our partners in European Union solve problems that we sometimes have. I think all of the countries have solved the same problems, and these problems are housing, services, these problems are jobs, as we solve it here at this conference, AI, of course, and sometimes also the losing of the trust to these democratic institutions. So these are things we are solving in the Senate in cooperation with European Union.
How important is this, Rachel, to keep modernizing laws, our legislation, overhauling them from time to time? Of course, AI is something that the Honorable Representative referred to. These are new things that are coming about, which is why obviously we need to have safeguards for them as well. So how important is this constant overhauling and modernization of our legislations from time to time?
So in New Zealand...
And what about New Zealand?
Yeah.
How recently did you do that?
So in New Zealand, because we have this very fast lawmaking process, it means that we can modernise laws quite quickly, and we have a well-digitalised system of all of those laws as well. In terms of two comments I wanted to make in relation to the other questions as well, is in terms of, I agree with what everyone has said about the importance of politicians and being respectful of the courts and not getting involved. That's one important thing, but also how the courts communicate, because of course most people aren't out there thinking, most people, and it might be different in India, but in New Zealand most people would not know who the judges were. And so how judges communicate themselves is important. And we have a chief judge of our district court in New Zealand, so the lower court in the hierarchy, and he is very clear in what he is calling te ao marama, which is looking to the light, about simplifying court processes so that those involved understand what is happening. So we don't use lots of fancy Latin terms, which I'm a former lawyer and have been guilty of that you use simple language and you have community people in the courtroom as well. So I think that's another important thing to be doing in terms of modernising how we think about the law. It's how people interact with it is very important, as well as how much there is of it and how we go about writing it. But in terms of the AI issue, my observation is that it's very important that politicians are making the decisions on policy. And that is what politicians are there to do. We're there to argue the pros and cons of a different policy. So should we have a speed limit of 50 kilometres an hour or 100 kilometres an hour? Let's argue about the lives that will be saved. That is a job for politicians to do. The actual drafting of the law and the searching of the law, that is a different issue. And how we scrutinise the making of the law, I think there is a role for both human, and I'm sure there are many efficiencies that can come with AI as well.
That's an interesting point that you made. Mikhail, taking that to you as well about this, constant overhaul of our laws, and she raised a wider point, the Honourable Representative from New Zealand, of who should have the final say in certain matters. Should it be the judiciary? Should it be the legislature? What is your take on that? On specific matters of policy? Should the judiciary have the final say, or should the legislature have the final say? And also, how recently in the Maldives have you overhauled your laws, your legislations, etc.?
I think that when it comes to legislation, well, belonging to the legislature myself, I think my opinion would be quite biased. However, since, you know, I always...
Saying it in front of the judiciary.
I always advocate that when it comes to who should be implementing the law and who should be making the law, it should come from the people and from elected representatives. And so my opinion is quite biased. However, I also believe that there are certain constitutional matters that should be left to the judiciary, and as is the case in the Maldives. And in 2028, coming back to your question, in 2028, 45% of our electorate will be young people. So we are realigning the People's Majlis, and we are going fully digital. And we have also recently introduced an e-petition system. And so I think we are now harmonizing the ways of the Majlis to align with the needs of the young people.
It's quite interesting that you say it's a People's Majlis. So is that another re-emphasizing of the fact that the people should have the final say?
Absolutely.
You know, Dan, coming to you now on, you know, the point, of course, of arbitration versus litigation. You know, it's a very legal sort of question, but we have, you know, seen this push in India at more arbitration over pure litigation, because there's a lot of pendency of matters in India. Of course, the size is there, and you know, the judge's strength, of course, all that is being overhauled, and efforts are being made, and we have seen, of course, record number of cases come down in recent times over here. What is the kind of pendency numbers in the UK? How fast are cases disposed there? And is there an emphasis on arbitration over litigation there too?
I wouldn't be qualified to answer that question, but in the end, the courts operate on the laws that the Parliament passes. And I think when it comes to technology and AI and the challenges that we face as politicians on behalf of the public, in the UK, unlike New Zealand, where you are, Rachel, law feels like a very slow. It takes a long time to pass legislation through the House of Commons, through the House of Lords, through government. And so I think I would be willing, I wouldn't be able to say exactly how it would look, but I would be willing to look at how we speed up the passing of legislation to keep pace with the technological change that we're all living through. And I think Britain needs to do much more to get laws up to date and protecting the public when it comes to this transformational change.
That's a good point, and in fact, we would vouch for it as well. India has signed a free trade agreement with New Zealand. We have signed one with the UK. We have signed one with the EU. We hope for one with the Maldives too. But you know, it takes its time because it has to be ratified, and only then does it get implemented. So these things should hopefully move faster. All right, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to quickly end by going across the panel and, you know, getting one last thought from you, or one big trend that you see coming in the future of legislating the laws. I'll begin with you.
Maybe I will say what I said before, but I think that we should cooperate with people. We should cooperate with civil society, with non-profit organizations. We should focus also on minorities, because our democracy is as strong as we take care of these most weak people in our society. So this is a challenge, I think, at this time when we face a lot of disinformation and populism in politics, especially on social media. I don't know if you have it in India, but in Europe we have a lot of hate speech and disinformations. So these are challenges, and we have to be with people, as I said. As Václav Havel said that he believed in people and they loved him. We have to cooperate with them.
Yeah, so going back to my point about policy being decision-making and that politicians need to be talking about that and communicating, I think there is a lot of opportunity to do better communication with community, with the voters, with the people, using tools such as citizens' assemblies, but I'm sure there will be some opportunities with new technology in that as well.
I think in the future, I think the onus is on increasing accessibility a lot. I think it started off with COVID, and now we're expanding on that. And with that, I think a lot of our parliaments are now more accessible, and we'll be working on that even in the future.
Thank you. I think the 4 nations represented here.
And 5 with me too.
But
I'm not a representative. Yes, go ahead.
Although India is perhaps ahead of us 4, I think we don't have the United States here, we don't have China here. We have to be conscious that we are renting a lot of what AI is doing from the United States and from China, and we have to start building it and owning it and controlling it ourselves, or at least having alliances and competition in that, because this is like the Industrial Revolution. You have to create and invent and own the fundamental tools of automation, of AI, of technology, in order to be able to really offer the protection that we need to offer to our publics.
Well, to conclude, I think we've made some very, very important points, and of course, yes, these are all challenges that are coming up in the future. Social media, AI, these are all things that are already, of course, have gained a lot of traction. Safeguards are important as well. And I think we can sign off on one note by saying that I think the future of legislation and legislation making is quite secure if we continue to have as progressive and erudite a panel, a representation as we saw today in all 4 of you. Thank you all very much for joining us at NXT 2026. Thank you.
Well, a round of applause for all our legislators, the lawmakers who just gave an insight into what the future of legislature, what the future of law should look like. All right. From the future of legislating the law, we are going to move on to innovation. And what is the future of innovation? And in the NXT forum, the next session is an important one, an insightful one, and an invigorating one. We have with us Mr. Sriram Natarajan. He's the founder, director, and CEO of Mole Diagnostics. I would like to welcome him on stage. And we also have with us Dr. Namit Choksi. He's the CEO, Tend Health, and he's going to be moderating this session.
Very good evening once again, everyone. Such an honor to be with you, sir. Let me start by saying that, in the Silicon Valley, when people talk about disruption, they usually mean building a new app that helps you order your coffee faster. Mr. Natarajan chose to choose a more difficult problem, which is, really diagnosing and helping people here. So, sir, on that note, let me actually start with tuberculosis. Tuberculosis remains one of the world's deadliest infectious disease, and India carries a good chunk of that disease burden. Technologies like TrueNat have truly helped bring molecular TB testing closer to primary healthcare settings. In your view, what will it actually take to eliminate tuberculosis in the coming decade, and what role would decentralized diagnostics play in achieving that goal, sir?
Thank you, Namit, for the introduction and the kind words. And thanks to the NXT team for inviting me to come here. Now, coming to the point about tuberculosis, yes, it is the #1 killer of people because of infectious disease worldwide. And India contributes 25% of that burden. So India is the largest TB country in the world. I don't know if you people have, generally living in cities, we don't come to see people affected with TB, but it's a very debilitating disease. And people really have to sell everything to get treated. And it's a big problem. So while we have had this program called the National TB Elimination Program for a long time, TB has never come down. And fundamentally, the realization is that this is fundamentally because people are not getting diagnosed properly. The diagnostic that was being used, called smear microscopy, was only half effective, which meant half the people never got diagnosed in time. And these people were the ones who kept giving TB to other people. And that's how TB has been always growing instead of coming down, although a lot of efforts have been made into free treatment and free care. So that's where we come in the picture. So fundamentally, the idea was to ensure that everybody gets diagnosed properly with a very reliable technology, which is close to 100% compared to the microscopy, which is only 50%. So TrueNat that we innovated and developed is a platform which can do TB right at the microscopy centers. These are all called as primary health centers, which are really in very, very remote areas and with very, very minimal infrastructure. And we have been able to make these centers to do TB testing using a molecular platform like TrueNat, which was earlier unthinkable. With this, now we are able to now ensure that more and more people get diagnosed early and get treated. The fact is that if you are able to diagnose TB patients early and put them on treatment, then you can treat them 100%. It's a completely curable disease.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes. And I mean, sir, to your point, right? Like, TB is a communicable disease, and to your point, if it doesn't get diagnosed, it only keeps kind of growing. And to echo your point, it's an easy treatment, really, as long as it gets diagnosed.
Exactly.
So really kudos to you, sir, on kind of building. Sir, switching gears a little bit in terms of your founder journey. As a venture capitalist and private equity investor, I've seen a lot of founders build in software, in AI. What convinced you really to in building a hardware-driven biotech company here in India? Or what inspired you?
I think the big gap still is hardware.
Sure, sir.
Right? AI will come always on top of it. Even in TB, AI does play a role, especially in terms of X-rays, which can be interpreted through AI and so on, but not without an hardware. So you still need a hardware. In the X-ray, you still need the X-ray machine, and the X-ray images are read by AI. In our own case in TrueNat, although AI doesn't play a direct role, but AI does play a role in terms of integrating all the information and providing a common platform to be able to monitor patients on a long term. So hardware is #1, and the AI comes on top of that. So AI by itself cannot do much in the healthcare space, at least. So that's where we are. So somebody has to do the hardware part, and so that's where we thought we should come in the picture, because definitely there were a lot of issues and required innovations to solve them, and so we thought we should be playing that role, and that's.
I think so, very well said. Thinking of kind of hardware and where you're at, how do you think that point of care molecular diagnostics will evolve over the next decade?
So TB is an example, but people suffer from multiple diseases, right? And infectious diseases. And all of them are killers in some way or the other, whether it's dengue, whether it's typhoid, whether it is malaria, all of them are killers, and all of them need early diagnosis. So the beauty of the platform like TrueNat that we have, although we are putting it for TB diagnosis right now, but the same machine can do 40 different diseases now. So right at the community level, right at the primary level, people can now look for 40 different conditions. And all these diseases now can be diagnosed early, and people can be put on right treatment. So first of all, it helps the patient because the patient survives, because he got diagnosed early and he got the right treatment. But it also ensures that he stops transmitting to other people, so that you also cut down the transmission of the diseases. And at the same time, these people don't go to now tertiary centers, so the cost of treatment on these patients, which we are all spending huge amounts of money on, doesn't have to happen because people are getting diagnosed early and treated.
That's very, so if I can dive a little more into what you just said, that, one of the most powerful aspect of MolBio's work is that technology, to your point, reaches small towns and rural health centers. As a founder, how does it really feel to see this high-tech innovation directly impacting lives on ground and in small rural parts of, India and creating impact?
No, that's what motivates me and that's what keeps me driven all the time.